It is the ultimate symbol of femininity. We associate it with supermodels, red carpets, and elegance. But for centuries, the high heel was exclusively worn by men, and not just any men, but killers. It was invented as a military weapon for Persian cavalry to shoot arrows with deadly precision. To understand the heel, you have to forget about the catwalk and imagine a battlefield in the 10th century. You are looking at the Persian army, modern-day Iran. They had the most terrifying cavalry in the world. But riding a horse while shooting a bow and arrow is incredibly difficult. You need stability. If you stand up in the stirrups to take a shot and your foot slips, you fall. You die. So Persian engineers created a piece of military technology. They took the flat riding boot and attached a block of wood to the heel. This wasn't for fashion. It was a tool. It was a locking mechanism. When the soldier stood up in the saddle, the high heel hooked securely into the stirrup. It locked the leg in place. This allowed the archer to stand completely still on a galloping horse, turn his body, and fire arrows with sniper-like precision. So, the first high heels were essentially combat gear. They were the medieval equivalent of tactical combat boots or a gun holster. For centuries, if you saw a man wearing high heels, you didn't think he was pretty. You thought he was dangerous. He was a man who lived on a horse and killed for a living. But how did this piece of desert military kit end up in the royal palaces of Europe? Diplomacy. Fast forward to the year 1599. Shah Abbas I of Persia had a problem. He was fighting the Ottoman Empire, and he needed allies. So he sent a massive diplomatic mission to Europe. He sent his best soldiers, his ambassadors, and his elite cavalry to visit the courts of Spain, Germany, and Russia. When these Persian soldiers marched into the European capitals, the aristocrats were stunned. They had never seen men like this. They looked exotic, powerful, and incredibly masculine. And the Europeans noticed their shoes. These strange heeled boots gave the soldiers a towering height and a distinctive swagger. Almost immediately, a Persian mania swept through Europe. Aristocrats are like teenagers. They love to copy the cool new thing. European men started ordering heeled shoes from their cobblers to look like the tough Persian warriors. It was a way of saying, I am virile. I am a man of action. The heel became a status symbol of masculinity. But as it moved from the barracks to the ballroom, the design changed. The heels got higher, the shapes got thinner, and eventually, the most powerful man in the world hijacked the trend and made it his own brand. Enter King Louis XIV of France, the Sun King. He was the absolute monarch of France. He built the Palace of Versailles. He believed he was chosen by God. But he had one major insecurity. He was short. Louis XIV was only 5 feet 4 inches tall. In a world where physical stature equaled power, this was unacceptable. He couldn't be smaller than his courtiers. So Louis weaponized the high heel. He commissioned shoes with massive 4-inch heels. He decorated them with battle scenes. But his signature move was the color. In 1673, he passed a law regarding his shoes. His heels would always be red. Why red? 2 reasons. 1. The economic flex. Red dye, cochineal, was incredibly expensive. By wearing red heels, he was showing that he was rich enough to crush money under his feet. 2. The violent symbolism. The red heel implied that the king was always ready to crush the enemies of France. It symbolized stepping in a pool of blood. It became the Louboutin of the 17th century, but strictly for men. Louis XIV made a decree. Only members of the royal court who were in the king's favor were allowed to wear red heels. It was a visual loyalty card. If you saw a man with red heels in Paris, you knew he had direct access to the king. If you fell out of favor, you had to change your shoes. So, for 100 years, the high heel was the ultimate symbol of patriarchy, power, and male authority. So, what happened? Why did men stop wearing them? Why did the gender polarity flip? It happened during the Enlightenment in the 18th century. This was the age of reason, science, and logic. Philosophers began to argue that men should be rational and useful. Flashy clothes, makeup, and high heels were seen as irrational and silly. Psychologists call this historical event the Great Male Renunciation. Men abandoned bright colors. They abandoned jewelry. They abandoned heels. They adopted the boring, dark, flat three-piece suit that we still wear today. They decided that a man's value came from his work, not his beauty. But women didn't renounce. As men abandoned the heel, women adopted it. Initially, women started wearing heels in the 1600s to look more masculine. It was a form of cross-dressing power play, like wearing a boyfriend's oversized shirt today. But once men abandoned the heel completely, it became exclusively female. And then, the design changed to reflect the new gender role. The men's heel was thick and blocky, like a cowboy boot. The women's heel became thin, unstable, and decorative. It transformed from a tool of mobility, riding a horse, to a tool of immobility. And this leads us to the dark psychology of the modern stiletto. In the 20th century, the stiletto was invented. A heel made of steel, thin as a dagger. Why do we find this attractive? Evolutionary biologists have a theory, and it is purely carnal. When a woman wears high heels, the biomechanics of her body change. To keep her balance and not fall forward, she has to push her chest out and arch her lower back. This posture, the arched back and protruding rear, is known in biology as lordosis behavior. In the animal kingdom, this is the universal mating posture. It signals to the male that the female is receptive. The high heel artificially forces the female body into this ready state constantly. Furthermore, the instability of the shoe changes the way she walks. It shortens the stride. It forces the hips to sway more to maintain the center of gravity. It emphasizes vulnerability. The Persian soldier wore the heel to be more stable and deadly. The modern woman wears the heel to be less stable and more alluring. It is the exact same object, but the function has been inverted 180 degrees. However, the manly heel didn't disappear completely. It went underground, or rather, it went to the Wild West. Look at a cowboy boot. Look at the heel. It is high. It is angled. Why? Because cowboys are horse riders just like the Persians. They needed the heel to lock into the stirrup. So, the direct descendant of the original Persian invention is not the stiletto. It is the cowboy boot. The American cowboy is unknowingly wearing the same shoes as the Persian cavalry. So, the next time you see a woman struggling to walk on a cobblestone street in 6-inch heels, or the next time you see a CEO wearing red-soled luxury shoes, remember the irony. You are looking at a piece of military technology that lost its war. You are looking at a locking mechanism that forgot its stirrup. The shoe hasn't changed. We just forgot who it was built for.